I'm Junior Vance, driver of the Poison Dart, and you're watching Octane Addicts only on Torqued Up TV. So this is a 1975 Dodge Dart Swinger. It was originally a six-cylinder car, and when I got it back with no engine in it, I went ahead and did the V8 conversion when I started putting it back together. And it is just a 318. A few people have seen videos and heard it run, and they swear that it's not, but I swear it is. And I think this little 318 is going to shock a lot of people. But about 14 and a half years ago, I was riding down the road and I saw this car sitting in a lot by the highway with a $1,000 written on the windshield. And I don't know what it was about it, but it hooked me real quick. And so I spun around, went back, checked the car out, and I instantly fell in love with the car. So I didn't have $1,000 on me, but I had to have it. And I called my mom and I said, for my birthday and my Christmas present combined this year, really all I want is to borrow $1,000 so I can get this car. And she went out there with me and she said, absolutely. She thought it was cool. So I got the money, called the guy, and we got the car home. And I mean, it was wore out, beat up, slant six, interior was trashed, front end was just shot. And I didn't care. It was just a cool car and I loved it. And doing what moms do, I think I might have given her $300 back, and she said, don't worry about it. So because of my mom, I have the coolest car I've ever owned, because I've had a whole lot of cars, but I love this car. It was just something about it. And I fixed up all the mechanical stuff on it, didn't do anything cosmetic to it whatsoever. And I drove this car every day for almost 2 years. I just loved it. And I had a 68 Coupe de Ville, I had a little Hot Rod S10, I had a 69 Bronco. They all sat in the yard. They were all running, driving, tagged, and insured. Didn't matter. I just wanted to drive this car everywhere I went. So I kind of got in a tight spot. Life happened, and I had to sell some stuff. And I got down to where I had to get rid of this car, and I really didn't want to, but I didn't have much of a choice. So I sold it, and about a year and a half later, I was thinking about getting another hot rod, another toy or something, and I was thinking about getting another bike, and somebody said, you know, all you ever talk about is how you really wish you'd never gotten rid of that Dart. Maybe you ought to try to find another one. And I thought, well, you know, another one's not going to be the same one, but it's worth a shot. So the next day at work, I went on Craigslist while we were down for a little while, and I saw a one-line ad, no pictures, no real description. It just said 1975 Dodge Dart Swinger, $700. And that's all it said. And I thought, man, this thing's going to be a pile of rust. It's going to be a beat up four-door. There's no motor, something. And I almost didn't call, but I thought about it that afternoon. I called the number and I started asking the guy questions about the car. And he says, well, it is a two-door. He said, but we pulled the motor out and put it in a truck. And I said, okay, well, that kind of explains why it's so cheap, but still, I says, it rusted out real bad? He said, no. He said, it's got that one bad spot that most of them have on the quarter panel, but it comes with a patch panel. And the funny thing is, when I sold this car, I had a year one patch panel that I never put in, that I just threw in the trunk and let go with the car. And it went through like 4 or 5 different owners. And I went up there and it ended up being my car, same car, my patch panel still in the trunk. So I didn't even hesitate. I handed him the cash and loaded it right on the trailer. And that was on Halloween night 2008, the second time I bought this car. It will be the last time I buy this car because it's not going anywhere again. So, you know, it's kind of crazy to me. You know, that does happen to some people, but it doesn't happen very often. And it's not like I went looking specifically for this car. So I kind of felt like it was fate. And I definitely am never going to get rid of this car again. So it gave me the opportunity to put it up in storage since it already had the motor out, and take some time to think about how I wanted to really truly build the car. And it took a few years before I got started on it again, but as soon as I got in a good place where I could work on it and had the money that I needed to build it the way I wanted to build it, I started going wide open, building it the way it is right now. and I think it's going to be a pretty cool hot rod when it's done. Well, I really wanted some kind of a catchy name on the car because I love nostalgia drag racing, and you know, every funny car or gasser or super stock car or something back in the 60s and the early 70s always had some kind of a catchy, cool name that people could remember that sounded neat when you say it. And I just thought, you know, Poison Dart kind of sounds a little bit menacing, you know, as a race car for its opponents, but it just kind of sounds cool. And the car being green and being kind of patina, and this is the original paint on this car, and it just, to me, it almost has a little bit of a voodoo vibe to it. And then a friend of mine went kayaking in Ecuador and brought me back a shrunken head that I said, well, I think that fits it just right. So I hung that on the rear view mirror and figured I'll just call it the Poison Dart. You know, when I started really getting into this, I was probably about 14 years old. Grew up in Athens, Georgia, and there's only one track anywhere around there, and it's Atlanta Dragway. It's a really nice facility, but the only thing going on there that really interested me was bracket racing. So I figured I'd always end up one day building a bracket car. But when I moved to South Carolina a couple years ago, I moved here specifically because of the car scene in this area around Greenville. The nostalgia racing that they've got going on here is awesome. I love bracket racing cars because they still resemble cars. I'm not big into the NHRA stuff where everything looks the same, it sounds the same, it goes the same speed. I like the old school blue collar style racing where, you know, hardworking guys are putting together whatever they can, and they're going out there on the weekends and they're just having fun, and it's a really good environment. But I was at a swap meet at Atlanta Dragway on a Saturday, and that's when I met Greg Porter. And I didn't really even know who Greg Porter was at the time, but he said, you know, you ought to come up and check out our big show up in South Carolina one time. And it's called Steel in Motion. I said, well, that sounds cool. So I checked it out, and it looked awesome. So when it came back around, I went to Steel in Motion, and it was like I had found everything I'd ever been looking for. The car scene was so alive. All the car club guys, you know, all the nostalgia racers, all the gassers, all the rockabilly greasers. I mean, everything that I thought was cool that I had wanted to find and be a part of was right here. And I mean, it's an awesome scene. So I decided I was going to move up here just for that reason alone, because this is really my hobby. It's my passion. It's more of a lifestyle for me. And I got hanging out with a lot of the racers, and the car club guys put on so many cool events up here. I love what they do, their shows, the bands that they have come play. It's awesome, but I've always been a little bit more geared towards the performance aspect and the racing aspect. So at Steel in Motion in 2018, I decided I was going to go up and introduce myself to the Sucker Punch family, because that's always been my absolute favorite gasser. I love it. Now, it's a Ford and I'm a Mopar guy, so can't keep that on the down low, but you know, it's an awesome car. And I went up and I introduced myself to Travis. Super nice guy. And he introduced me to his wife, EJ. Super cool lady. And she introduced me to their daughter, Tabby. And I talked with them for a little while, and man, it was just, they're so cool with what they do and doing it as a family. And I thought it was really fun kind of hanging out with them for the rest of the day. And it ended up going a little bit more than that. I was hanging around with them more and more, so I was able to, because of them and being around that family all the time, I was able to meet even more people in the nostalgia racing scene and the gasser scene around here. And it opened up a lot of doors for me, and I met a lot of really awesome people that at this point have become more like family. Everybody in this whole local gasser scene around here is so supportive and so inspirational. And you know, the Sucker Punch crew and family, they just kind of opened up everything for me around here by being just the most inviting. Every time they were going out somewhere, they'd ask me if I wanted to go along, and I get to hang out. And so I went from being a fan of Sucker Punch to actually helping with the car a little bit at the tracks now. And you know, it felt really, really good to be a part of that I'd always been looking for, this whole family.